Flip on almost any sitcom, watch any movie, and often even read a book, and you will see the same thing. The man, the dad usually, is the punchline. The men are always portrayed as clueless and weak, or maybe just completely absent. Unfortunately, that caricature has slipped into the capital C church and maybe even your local C church. I mean, somehow, and we could easily kind of discover or discuss why, but strength in men really has become synonymous with toxic masculinity. And in our fear, right, of producing abusive leaders, which we don't want to do, we have often overcorrected and sometimes way overcorrected. I mean, we've in some cases even began celebrating things like timidity and passivity and quote unquote niceness as if those were really the godly alternatives. But here's the pressure point for us to consider in this episode. A passive man is no less toxic than a prideful one. I mean, think about it, right? A passive man is just as toxic as a prideful one because passivity abdicates responsibility. And when men step back from families, when they step back from churches, when they step back in any way, communities suffer. It wasn't always like this, right? For centuries, a man was expected to protect and provide and to lead. Now, in a real, reaction to, legitimate abuses and chauvinism and true toxic masculinity, right? There is a truth to that, but as a response to that, really, culture kind of, and the proverbial, they threw out the baby with the bathwater. In a real way, all versions of strength got confused with selfishness. And then authority got confused with abuse, and leadership got confused with oppression. I mean, it kind of goes well beyond a gender conversation, actually. I mean, our expressive, individualistic culture has kind of created or contributed to this negative view of authority and strength of any kind. I mean, when you are your own boss, no one else can be, right? When you are the only authority over you, which is what the world teaches, no one else can have authority over you, which includes parents, includes police officers. Hey, it's anti-gospel. It includes God. So instead of kind of let's get back to the church. Like instead of offering a better way, what the church kind of did, and I get it. We're a part of culture too, even though we don't want to be swayed by the world. We're in it, and it's hard not to. So we often join in the cultural chorus, and it's true of this topic too. We told men to sit down instead of stand up, to blend in instead of lead out, and the results are actually pretty painful, right? I mean, passive men produce mostly broken families. Absent leaders produce wandering organizations, including churches. Weak husbands produce weary wives. Confused fathers produce conflicted children. My wife sent me an article several weeks ago, and I don't have it on hand, so I can't give you the exact quotes, okay? But I bet you could we could look this up. The research in this article was really talking about how children need fathers, to, of course, which we would all say, absolutely, I agree, right? However, the research went a lot further. It concluded, and this is why it stuck out to me. If a child has to grow up in a single parent household, the child is significantly better off with a father in the home than a mother. I mean, think about that for a minute. That is definitely not the mentality I think that we all have. It's not the one that I had going into this. The courts don't have this mentality. Now, granted, right, there are plenty of cases where the father is abusive, where the father is the problem, and the child should not be in that home full time or unsupervised. I totally can understand that. However, just assuming that it's irreconcilable differences, that the father and the mother are both good people, they both love the child, right? The research shows that a single parent father household is significantly better for the child. And the research kind of proved why. And you probably have already maybe figured this out, right? Children can get a kind of motherly influence in lots of places outside of the school, home, like at school, right? But what about men, right? When a child goes to school or when a child goes to, almost anywhere, men, for the most part, are so absent in the child's life unless they have a father at home. I don't know if this is true. I have no research to back this up, so don't quote me in any way. But I wonder if this is partially why sports have become such a big deal for kids and for families. If you were a single mother at home with children, I can understand sacrificing a lot of your money, your time, your life, your Sundays even, for your child to be around other coaches who might be men who can help lead that child a little bit better. I mean, my kids played football. Now, I was there, I was one of the coaches. And I was also, I think, very present at home. However, when I think about it, with my two boys playing football, I coached Tuesday nights, Thursday nights. We were a little over the top at times. Sometimes we even did a Friday walkthrough. We had Saturday games. I mean, it's four good kind of fatherly figure, male present moments in those boys' lives. Now, if they had grown up in a home without me as a father, that would have been pretty beneficial for them. So again, I don't know, maybe that's not true. Or maybe there is some truth to that. Now, let's kind of get back to church for a minute. You're a pastor, or maybe you're a ministry leader. So what do you do about this? Like, what is your solution? Well, the solution, I'll tell you this, is not softening up men more. It's actually creating stronger, Christ-like men. But of course, that Christ-like is the key word here. I mean, think about Jesus for a minute, right? We tend to picture kind of gospel Jesus, quote unquote, teaching on hillsides, hugging children, forgiving sinners. And I love that Jesus. And he is gentle and he is gracious. But you know better. That isn't the full picture of Jesus. I mean, Revelation shows us Jesus as the King of Kings, right? Remember some of the words in Revelation about Jesus: sword in hand, eyes like fire, leading heaven's armies. I mean, there is nothing timid about that Jesus, nothing weak about that Jesus. That is a strong, courageous, and I'm going to use a word that can be taken out of context, authoritative Christ. I mean, in fact, the most loving moment of Jesus' life occurred on a Roman cross, right? Which required more courage, more strength, and more love than probably we can even imagine. So we need to display and teach that biblical masculinity is not one-dimensional, right? Christ-likeness is the fusion of compassion and courage, of tenderness and toughness. Strong men aren't toxic because they're strong. Strong men are toxic because of toxicity, because they use it selfishly, because they feel might makes right. Those are the toxic men that are strong. But strong men alone aren't toxic. They're necessary. I mean, they protect, they provide, they disciple, they serve, they step up when others step back. So let's kind of dig deeper, make this, just get real practical. You know me, we're going to be practical. How do pastors lead their churches, right? How can you lead your church in reclaiming some of this healthy, Christ-like masculinity? Let me just give you four quick things, maybe five. I'll give you probably five. Here's one. Model the spectrum of Christ-likeness. You have to do that. You've got to model it for people to see. You've got to teach it for everyone to see across the full spectrum, right? You don't just preach the soft Jesus. Show your men that he's both shepherd and warrior. Like, teach about both sides of Jesus and call out the toxicity of selfish strength, but also call out the toxicity of passivity in men. That's one. You got to model the full spectrum, teach the full spectrum. We talk about this a lot. You got to teach the full spectrum of the Bible. Well, we need to teach the full spectrum of Jesus. Here's number two. I think we need to begin calling men into responsibility and therefore calling them out of comfort. I mean, a lot of times we call people into something like this, but we call people. We don't just call men, right? We need to be specific. We need to call men into responsibility and out of comfort. Men, they don't need another sit around Bible study. You know what they need? They need to be challenged to lead, to serve, to sacrifice, and they need to be called out directly for that. Number three, here's a third thing. We should celebrate strong leadership as godly. I mean, we should call out abuse, absolutely. But abdication must be called out too, right? I mean, we should celebrate strength in ministry action. So when we see a man that is leading in strength and in love, we should call that out and we should call it what it is. It's godly. Number four, we should really equip men for both, and I used this phrase earlier, toughness and tenderness. We need to equip them, not just talk about it, but we need to prepare them to be this, to equip them so they can be this. This kind of a complete man, right, knows how to fight for his family and how to embrace his children and his wife and his community. I mean, one of the best ways you can equip men is by putting them in community together. I've been thinking a lot about this, and I coach, hundreds of churches. You know this. I work with churches all over the world, and we talk a lot about church things like groups, for instance. Like if I were starting a church today, or if I were, God calls me to pastor one again, I'd be very tempted to only offer groups for men and women and not do couples groups. I wouldn't do that. And I think here's why. Just side note, okay? You've probably been in couples groups. I've been in, lots of these, maybe a dozen, no joke, right? I've probably been in at least a dozen couples groups. And here's the thing I found every time. We often had fun. We met some new friends. In fact, some of my best friends in the world came through couples small groups. So there was benefit. But the benefit was almost exclusively relational, communal, not spiritual. And here's why. And maybe this is my problem, but I suspect it's not. I just don't know a lot of guys that are willing to sit in a circle where other women are present, even their wife, much less other women, and open up their heart and truly share what's going on inside of them. I don't think we do that. Put a circle of guys together, give them a few weeks, or even give them an hour with a campfire around them. I mean, fire, as my friend John Burkmeyer, he's the leader of Anthem Church, he says campfires are like truth serum for men. And it's true. Put guys together, put women together around a circle, the depth is immediately deeper. Conversations are significantly better. So I don't know, maybe there's something to this. And maybe that's a good way for you to equip men for that. And here's the last one, number five. We just got to reject these false dichotomies. I mean, it's not like toxic versus timid. It's cultural caricatures versus this Christ-like character. That's the dichotomy. And we got to reject the false ones and call into light the truth that the cultural caricature is not Christ-likeness. It's not Christ-like character. And then we got to explain what that is. So let's wrap up with this. Here's my challenge for you this month. Take a hard look at how your church talks to men and talks about men. Like in your sermons, your small groups, ministry environments, the decor in your church. Does it challenge men to lead? Does it inspire men? Does it feel masculine? Or is it effeminate? Man, I did a whole thing on this on music, so I won't go into it again, but just look across your entire church. Or, have you softened the edges? So much, though, that strength now feels suspicious, that authority feels suspicious. And if you truly dig in here, maybe you'll find one tangible step that you could take to elevate kind of Christ-shaped masculinity, where you can preach a much fuller picture of Jesus. You can highlight a man who leads faithfully, and you can call men into greater responsibility. Because I'll tell you this, what the world doesn't need is more weak, timid men. The world needs strong men who are living out of a Christ-like character of manliness. That's what they need. Men who love boldly, who lead sacrificially, who protect faithfully, and serve humbly.